What's up, everybody? It is I, TevinElChopo, friends call me Chop, and we are back with another review. This time, we're talking about season 3 of FX's drama, The Bear. So The Bear is a comedy drama series by FX, created by Christopher Stower. It is a show that follows Carmy Brizzato, who is an award-winning chef who returns to his hometown in Chicago to take over his family business, which is a failing sandwich restaurant. So the show follows Carm and his crew as they build up the family sandwich shop into a 5-star dining experience, and all the bumps and bruises that they get along the way. Now, I was relatively late to this show when the first season came out. I didn't necessarily watch it until right around the time that the second season was announced. I didn't necessarily think that a show about food or chefs would be particularly compelling, but after I watched the first season and even the second season, I did in fact find it very compelling, just with the tension that was being brought and just the high stakes of the situations that the characters are being put in. Now, granted that the stakes aren't super high, like no one is going to die at the end of any of these episodes, or it's not going to be life or death situations, but it is very much tense just in terms of how they shoot every scene, how everything is edited, how the music is being brought into place, and just the acting and the drama of the situations that just creates a level of tense air around every single thing that happens throughout the show. So season 1 is Carm essentially trying to build a rapport with his new crew, with season 2 being the build up into turning the beef into the Bear, a 5-star restaurant. And now here we are, season 3 is essentially the aftermath of that. The restaurant is now back open. It is now a fine dining experience, and now everyone is trying to find a way after the fact. So some of the things that I liked about this season of the show are the same things I liked about the past 2 seasons. For instance, the shooting and the editing of the show is still done really well. I really like how the music can convey the tone of every single moment, the high speed of everything. The pace moves really well with the edits. And I especially like the close-ups to people's faces to convey emotion that happens throughout the entire run of the show. It's a great way to build more intensity when it comes to character development and even the character acting. And speaking of character acting, I do think that the actors all across the board doing a terrific job. I don't even want to highlight anyone specifically because I think every single person on the cast played their part super well. And it's still fun for me to watch these characters as they go through their lives after we've seen them for these last 2 seasons. Just seeing where they're at now and where they've been has been very interesting. Now, despite the fact that I do think that the show is shot and edited really well, I think that the actors are doing a terrific job. Unfortunately, I will have to say that I think that this is the worst season of the show so far. And it mainly has everything to do with the story and the pace of the story itself. The biggest problem that I have really is that the pace is non-existent because the story is essentially non-existent. So again, for season 1, the story of the season was essentially how can Carm build a rapport with these new people in this new kitchen, and how can he face the struggles of this failing restaurant business, which led into season 2 that followed the progression of the restaurant's transition into fine dining, literally being under construction the entire season with a hard deadline as to when they needed to be open. So these things happening in the show built up a level of stakes within the show. There was a timeline of everything that needed to be done. So every moment, every second counts, no pun intended, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. But yes, every single second of the show counts, every edit counts, every decision made by the cinematographer counts. And I kind of feel like this show now at season 3 has lost a lot of that luster. The cinematography is still there. The actors are still doing an amazing job, like I said. But what is the story of this season so far? Basically, season 3 is about the aftermath of the Bear becoming a 5-star restaurant. So them having to deal with the hiccups of having to learn a new process, the challenges that Carm has been going through in his personal life after his breakup with his girl in season 2, and how that's affecting his work relationship with everyone around him. Now, I don't want to dive too deep into too many spoilers for the season, but essentially that is more or less what's going on. We're just mainly following the restaurant and all of the employees in their different moments of their lives. They each get moments to shine in their personal lives, but we're mainly just focused on what it means for them to now work at this place after it's been turned into a fine dining establishment. But again, the problem here is that there's no stakes for anything happening. We're not given an overarching problem for these characters to have to solve throughout the course of the season. Like, we do have characters like Marcus, who lost his mother in one of the episodes, and he had to go through that throughout the season, but I don't feel like it was particularly touched on too much for it to be a main crutch for really anyone other than him throughout the show. We also had the flashback episode with Tina, showing her struggles that she had before she was able to find the restaurant and be able to work there. And as much as I think that was a good episode, I don't think that it does anything for the narrative moving forward at all, to be brutally honest. And I think that's really my problem with every single scene and every single moment of this entire season, is that none of it feels like it moved the plot along in any real capacity. I don't necessarily feel like the characters have fully grown, except for maybe Marcus because of the loss of his mother. I don't necessarily feel like the characters are better. I don't feel like they've been progressing from where they were at in season 2. I can't also help but notice how many times the editor is going to keep cutting to clips of the first 2 seasons, things that we've already seen and heard in the first 2 seasons. And it just makes everything feel so non-essential. And I think that that's the thing that I will say most about this season of the show, is that there's nothing here that feels essential to the plot. It doesn't feel essential to the characters moving forward, and it doesn't really tell you anything about where the show is going to go in the next season. There's some tension about the bear getting a review, but we don't see the review until the very last couple minutes of the season. We also have the uncle character who had been funding the restaurant, who may be in a financial jam, but that is being told to us through side characters. That's not something that any of the main characters has ever been brought to their attention. So again, it's hard for any of us to feel any tension behind that happening, or even to know the gravity of what that actually means for our characters moving forward. And after it gets mentioned one time, it kind of gets swept under the rug from there. And like I said, the show does flashback to multiple moments that already happened in the previous 2 seasons, but it also does do flashbacks for other moments throughout the characters' lives, just in general. And again, the flashbacks don't necessarily do or say anything that we don't already know about these characters. Like, we know that Tina is dedicated to the bear because we already seen this extensive training that she would have gave up on if she didn't truly care about that place. We already knew that Marcus's mother was having health issues, and we also already knew that there was some type of emergency behind it because of the cliffhanger that we got at the end of season 2. We already knew that Carmi had messed up with his girlfriend because we saw him mess up with her at the end of season 2 again. So it's just kind of like, what do we learn in this season about any of these characters that we didn't already know about them? We already know about Carm and Natalie's dysfunctional relationship with their mother, so when the mother shows up for Natalie giving birth, it doesn't necessarily come off as a surprise. Any type of interaction that they have doesn't necessarily come off as shocking or even really overly compelling. Honestly, now that I think about it, I can't think of anything that happens throughout the entire run of this season that is really overly compelling or as nearly as compelling as what happened in the first 2 seasons. The cameos, I think, are perfectly fine. I think the only one that kind of got on my nerves might have been John Cena, but I think that he was okay. He didn't stay long enough for me to have too much of a real problem, and I actually like John Cena, so that wasn't really a big deal either. But again, just what are we doing? Like, I don't get the whole point of this entire season. It just feels like it's meandering along just for the sake of whatever happens next in season 4. There's a few things here and there that were hinted at, but again, nothing was delved deeply into. Nothing seems overly compelling. Nothing really brought me to the edge of my seat. And it doesn't really matter how good the acting is or the cinematography or the editing if the story behind it all doesn't necessarily lead to anything. And I don't think any part of the story this season has led to anything. And I feel like this season is especially filler because it just felt like a lot of these scenes dragged for a lot longer than they ever needed to. And it just felt like they dragged because the dialogue didn't bring any characters to a new point. There's no compelling revelation and conversation at all between anyone throughout the entire run of the season. There's not anything that couldn't be already inferred based on the images that we see. So when the characters are talking to each other, it just kind of feels like the scenes drag for so long and long and long, to the point where I even have to ask, like, how much longer are these episodes? Watching this season for me has been a slog, and this is the first time I can say that for the entire run of the show. Like, a lot of it now just feels more like style over substance. Like, we can hit you with a lot of compelling acting, cinematography, some good editing, but we're not gonna give you a story. And I kind of feel like that is the one thing that kind of makes everything irrelevant. Like, it's a cool show to watch, but it's not at the same time because it doesn't feel like it's going anywhere. It doesn't feel like a progressive season. I feel like moving forward, once we get a season 4, and we're definitely going to get a season 4 because they're shot season 3 and 4 together, and I'm hoping that season 4 is a lot more compelling, but it just feels like this is going to be a precursor to whatever happens in season 4, more than it feels feels like a complete season that can stand on its own. So the first 2 seasons of the show can stand on their own. If you were to just watch one season, you could watch season 1 and get the gist of what happens. You can watch season 2 and get the gist of what happens. You can watch season 3 and nothing changes. So if you've seen season 2, you don't really have to watch season 3 to know anything that happens. You already seen what happens. You already have an idea of what happens. And it just makes everything fall short for me. So yeah, overall, like I said, I think that I really enjoyed this show a lot, especially the first 2 seasons. And I think that this is a significant decline from those 2 seasons, but it's not particularly a terrible show. It's not the worst show in the world by any capacity. It still does a lot of great things, but it just doesn't have a real direction as to where it's going or what it's actually trying to say. And I think one more gripe that I'm gonna give you before I leave is that I couldn't help but notice that it felt like there was less cooking in this season. I don't know if it's just me making things up in my mind, but I kind of felt like there was more food in the first 2 seasons than there was in this. Like, there was definitely food throughout this season. I'm not saying there wasn't, but I just feel like there was less meals being shown, less preparation being done than there was in the previous 2 seasons. And I could be 100% wrong about that. I don't know. But again, these are just my opinions. I am excited for season 4 to hopefully pick up the pace of the show, bring some more of that tension, even if it's on a small scale, to just kind of help juice the show back up into being more prevalent and to being more interesting, to be honest. Like season 1 and 2, I did not fall asleep on at all. And yet season 3, I fell asleep on practically every episode. And I think that tells a lot about where the show is now and where it's headed. It may have been because the show just became so critically acclaimed that they felt like this season could be kind of a wash. But I really hope that they step their game back up for the next season. I hope that they kick it up a notch, and I hope that they're able to be successful, because this is one of the better shows that's out. Even with its flaws in the 3rd season, I would still recommend people to watch the show overall to get their own opinions of it. But yeah, season 3 of The Bear definitely left me disappointed. I wish there was more substance behind everything that we see. And I hope season 4 is better so that season 3 can be an outlier and we can progressively get better episodes and better seasons of this show. Again, everything was fine except for the lack of a story. And I think that that's something that I just can't ignore, especially for 10 episodes. But hey, these are just my opinions. Have you watched The Bear season 3 on FX? What do you think of it? Did you like it? Did you dislike it? How would you compare it to the first 2 seasons? Let me know in the comments below. Also, don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more videos just like this one. My name is TevinElChopo. Friends call me Chop, and I'll catch you guys next time. Peace.